wondering how I got into this mix. Mind playing tricks and I'm fiending for a fix. Habits overriding, imploding into explosion. Tapering away like ocean coast.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. This is Derrick Bros with the Conscious Resistance Network, and you are listening to the Conscious Resistance News Wrap-Up. Today is June 9th, 2015, and it's been another month since I've spoke to you. I've been doing these podcasts less frequently. I do apologize for anybody who pays attention to this or is curious what's going on in my mind and my world and what news I'm paying attention to. I do want to remind you that if you want to keep up with my work, all you have to do is subscribe, follow, bookmark the website derrickbros.contently.com. If you are watching, you see the screen right now, you see the website. If you're listening, go to that website, Derrick Bros, my first and last name, .contently.com. And that connects you to all of my articles for Mint Press News, truthandmedia.com, formerly benswan.com, and theantimedia.org, which is the three outlets I am currently writing for. And also I post my Conscious Resistance videos and vlogs and everything from there. So that's the easiest way to keep up with everything I'm doing. I'm not on Facebook anymore, so as far as my personal page and communication, I'm done with that. But you can send messages to the Conscious Resistance Network Facebook page, and either I or somebody else will see it. And yeah, let us know if you want to get involved. We're looking for new contributors and people who want to either start writing articles, essays, doing interviews, doing their own vlogs. We have people who do short poems sometimes. It's a nice team of people, and we're looking for more people. I'm also looking for anyone who might be interested in helping with social media, just real basic stuff like scheduling Facebook posts, and just, we are experiencing some growth. I can see it coming. We're, still a small network. We're on Facebook, as far as those measurements go, we're nearing 4,000 likes, which is pretty cool because I've been doing this for a few years and it's slowly building. And I feel like all of my work, the more I get out, and this book and everything is just helping the network grow and helping with the other people I work with, Katie Chaos, Peaceful Anarchism, Dominic, Damon, Neil, all these great people, help their work get out to a larger audience as well. So support us if you like what you see, become a part of it. If you would like to put your own message out there, your own spin on things. I've been getting emails recently from people who've been reading the book or heard a couple of my speeches recently in Austin, Houston, and Atlanta, who were inspired to do their own things, and that's always a good feeling. So things are moving forward, and that's why I've been so busy. Like I said, I went to Atlanta. I came back from the Silk Road trial, which we're going to talk about in just a few moments. I went to New York for the Silk Road trial for Ross Ulbricht's sentencing, and came back to Tennessee for some rest and relaxation, and ended up going to Atlanta for the Anarchy in Atlanta meetup hosted by Jeffrey Tucker, who actually wrote the review for my book. If you don't know who Jeffrey Tucker is, economist, founder of Liberty.me, Libertarian Social Network, also director of digital development at the Foundation for Economic Education. And I'd say an all-around brilliant person, lots of interesting things to say, and lots of interesting perspectives. So yeah, that was cool to hang out with everybody there. And I was somebody else that I've never met. This is the kind of amazing things that just always blow me away. Somebody who I've never met, who just heard about my work, paid for 20 copies of the book to be shipped overnight from Houston so that I could give them out for free at this event. And that was just amazing. I was able to actually give away about 25 or so copies, and people were very receptive and had some awesome conversations. So thank you to everyone, or anyone who might have been there, or anyone who's just reading my book in general. You can download the Conscious Resistance Reflections on Anarchy and Spirituality at theconsciousresistance.com/book, or just go to the website and you'll see a tab that says the book. Click on that. You got all the information there. Free download of a PDF. 2 different covers to order from. It's $5 plus shipping. If you're anywhere in the Houston, Austin, Texas area, or if you're at one of my speaking events sometime this summer, then the book is $7 in person. I most likely will not be attending PorcFest in New Hampshire, but my writing partner John Vibes will, and he'll be doing a speech for us and have copies of the books on sale. I will be going to the Jackalope Freedom Festival, which is in northern Arizona, in late July, and there's a possibility I'll be going to the Northwest Freedom Festival or Gathering or something like that. I think it's called Pacific Northwest. It's in Pacific City, Oregon, and it sounds pretty cool. It's a far drive for me, but I'm going to try to make it happen. So pay attention to the website, the Facebook page, and you'll see posts about that. If you do want to follow anything as far as my personal stuff, like I said, follow my Contently website for all of my articles. But if you want to keep up with just my thoughts and anything else I decide to post, you can follow me on Twitter at DBrosLiveFree. DBrosLiveFree. You can also follow the network and everybody else at The Conscious RN, and yeah, all that good stuff. Subscribe to our SoundCloud, subscribe to our YouTube, yada 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 yada. So let's move forward. I want to make this short and sweet. I've got a few different things to cover, ranging from Silk Road to Stingray Surveillance, and then I want to cover the last two articles I did from Detroit on Mint Press News. And I've done two of those. Actually, I submitted my third one yesterday, but it's not up yet. But these are a trilogy of articles from my time, my week in Detroit, and all the people I spoke to, and just showing these different angles. And I'm going to be putting out all those videos. Like I said, I've been extremely far behind, but I've got a list of awesome videos. Let me just throw this list out at you real quick. Besides all the Detroit videos, which will include interviews and talking with people from the Detroit Water Brigade, hearing about their situation, how they're handling that in the community, the water shutoffs to 20,000 plus people. I did a interview and awesome training session with Dale Brown of Detroit Threat Management. You can actually see me get tossed around and learn some disarming techniques. Pretty cool stuff. And I interviewed community members who are at gardens, who are just squatting in houses, buying houses, working on adverse possession, all these different people from around the city and from outside the city trying to get their foot in while people think that Detroit is falling apart, and really show people that there's a revitalization or a continuation, depending on your view, of beautiful things happening in the city. So I've got interviews with all those people and all those videos. So that's at least 4 or 5 right there. Then I'm going to be doing a video on what is anarchy without adjectives, what is mutualism, what is meditation, organizing against corrupt police and government. And this is going to be a very important one where I explore the freedom cells and honesty, the importance of honesty in a free society, things like that. So we've got a lot of cool videos. That's just for me, not to mention all the other stories everyone else is doing. Before we dive into the rest of the news and you hear more about Detroit and the Silk Road and surveillance, let me give you a brief rundown of the latest content from our website. So this is all amazing content coming from me and others. We just posted my speech from the Houston event a couple weeks ago, Derrick Bros on the Conscious Resistance. You'll hear me talk about the book and the philosophy behind it. Danilo, aka Peaceful Anarchism, just posted an interview with Michael Shanklin, who I believe, Mike started the Voluntary Virtues Network, and he's a pure freedom lover, founder of Voluntary Virtues Network. Interview with him. Katie Chaos just released a new video, actually 2 videos. These should be up. I don't think you can see this one, but both of them are out. Pro-vaccine arguments from a conscious parent-to-be. Pro-vaccine, you heard that. And then she put out a second one, which I think just came out this morning, called anti-vaccine arguments. So listen to both sides of her videos, see what you think, see if you think she's too much in the middle, or if she's, what would just, give us your thoughts. We also had a short piece from Dominic called They Fight for a Death Cult, which I recommend because it's really short, sweet, and simple, and awesome. Then Danilo interviews Daniel Hawkins, who wrote this series of articles last year, maybe 2013 even. Daniel Hawkins, he wrote Anarchy, Never Been Tried, and the History of Anarchist Societies. And so he discusses that and really breaking down the false assumption that anarchism has never existed. And this is something that we do in the book as well. Specifically with Zomia. And then a few weeks back I did a video called Did Stingray Surveillance Planes Spy on Baltimore Protesters, also looking at the growing danger of neonicotine pesticides, and going back even further, exposing reverse drug stings, which is another story I did for Mint Press News. So lots of information here, ranging from the news, politics, philosophy, and everything in between, health, all that good stuff. Check it out, become a part of it. Let's move on to the news. This week, my latest article, it just actually came out on, I have 2 articles out for this, and maybe even a third one, on Ross Ulbricht and the Silk Road trial. So basically, Ross was sentenced to 2 life sentences just a couple of Fridays ago. And if you go back, you can find my work, search my name and search Silk Road. You'll find all of my articles that I did during the trial in January and February. I think I did some of the most in-depth pieces that you'll find out there about the trial and exactly what was wrong with it. But essentially, the judge denied witnesses, denied pieces of evidence, allowed shady evidence to stand. Since the trial concluded and Ross was found guilty, we found out that there was 2 undercover agents who are guilty of some type of crime, stealing money and possibly drugs. So that causes conflicts of interest within the investigation, and maybe even shows that it wasn't that good of an investigation. So it's disturbing to see this happen to Ross. Under that, knowing that stuff, that there's just a lot of information that we haven't fully been given. And yes, he was the mastermind of the Silk Road, but essentially, we have to look at the Silk Road from a different angle. First of all, the first article I'm looking at here is from truthandmedia.com, and this is the one I wrote the morning of the trial. So this will give you some background, but not the actual what happened in the courtroom. I've got another article coming out for truthandmedia.com today that's basically going to mention the fact that now Ross's mom and his family is, of course, appealing the decision, the 2 life sentences. So he was given 2 life sentences without parole, which was like 20 years, 15 years, 5 years, life, and then the judge added at the end, and in the event that you are somehow released someday, you will be reprimanded to supervised custody and blah 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 blah, all this kind of crap. So I mean, his life is over unless they can somehow save him, and it's disturbing. It sucks because essentially all Russ Ulbricht did was create a way for people to do business without taxation. Yes, dealing in quote-unquote illegal drugs, but if people are allowed to make adult decisions, then this should be up to them, not the collective. Now, of course, there is issue with it lowering the barriers of access, and children, anyone with the internet, right, could get online and find their way to the Silk Road if they knew a little bit of, if somebody showed them, or if they knew a little bit of information. It's not that difficult. Kids are really intelligent these days, especially when it comes to the internet. But so we have to address that issue. But I think that the Silk Road is much like Napster in the early days of downloading, where it's they're going to try to shut down this one, but now look at it. You can download any movie or music or anything in the world that you want now, and nobody's going to come beat down your door. I mean, it's just the way the world has changed. And so the Silk Road may be one of the early stages of something to come. And I think that's really what the government fears, is not only that people are out there buying drugs, but that people will continue to turn away from their system completely and start to do business using things like Bitcoin and other non-traceable or less than traceable currencies outside of the Federal Reserve or whatever nation you're in, the central reserve currency for your particular landmass. And that's how you start removing the power from them. And that's the whole philosophy of agorism. And this is what I was saying with my latest article for Mint Press News. It just came out this morning, and I'm really proud of this one, so I hope that you will give it a few minutes of your time. It's a little bit long. I can't write short articles. When they ask me to do long-form journalism, I do long-form journalism. And this one's about 2,300 words or so, for those who keep in count. But I think it's worth your time. It's called What the Silk Road Trial Reveals About Free Speech, Political Prisoners in the U.S. And I did some interviews with Ross's mom. I interviewed Jeffrey Tucker. And I think that what I am going for here, and I think the case can be made, and I think I make a good case of it, is what Ross's mom is saying, is that this is a political statement. She said it was an endorsement of the drug war, and the drug war is a failure. And so this is the lens that I think we should look at this from, is that the drug war is a failure, and that Ross, if you look at the words of not only Ross Ulbricht, but look at the words of the Dread Pirate Roberts, it was obvious that he believed in agorism, and that's a particularly apolitical philosophy that isn't going to try to work within the government. Now, the government's attorney at one point told Ross, if you want to make change, if you have a political agenda, you do that through the political process. And this is more of that same bullshit, because this is the type of thinking that they want you to have, is that that's the only solution. But obviously, if you listen to my work, or if you've read my book, you know the ideas of agorism. We're not using violence. We're not using voting. We are creating the next stage of humanity and of our evolution. We are creating counter institutions. Now listen to this quote from the Dread Pirate Roberts on the Silk Road. Silk Road was founded on libertarian principles and continues to be operated on them. It is a great idea and a great practical system. It is not a utopia. It is regulated by market forces, not a central power. Even I am subject to market forces by my competition. No one is forced to be here. The same principles that have allowed Silk Road to flourish can and do work anywhere human beings come together. The only difference is that the state is unable to get its thieving, murderous mitts on it. So this is obvious that was, that Ross Ulbricht and the Dread Pirate Roberts believed that this was a big statement to make. It wasn't just, as the judge would have it, that Ross is a sociopath motivated by greed or any of these silly things. Now let me read you a portion of this article here. During the sentencing, the government argued that although Ulbricht was motivated in part by a political agenda, he must, quote, go through the political process to achieve change. Yet the strategy of both Ulbricht and Dread Pirate Roberts was specifically apolitical. Their particular strain of market anarchism, known as agorism, calls for creating change by using entrepreneurship to create counter-institutions to the state, media, education system, and other institutions typically funded by government or corporate entities. Supporters of agorism believe this will lead to the establishment of free communities, or agoras, that can achieve change without voting or violence. And specifically, the judge said that it was a dangerous philosophy. She didn't specifically mention agorism, but she said, it's deeply troubling that you see the law as oppressive. You are no better than the law, and your words reveal arrogance. And she said several times that she had to do this, horrible, lengthy sentence to make sure that anybody who would dare carry the flag or take up the flag of Ross Ulbricht would know that they would face consequences. And it seemed like she was making a political speech. She kept referring to how she was humbled, that she was tasked with saving our social fabric and all this kind of crap. And she pointed at the American flag. And, when I get to the point here on the article at the end is basically saying, what happens, though, when the people recognize that the laws are unjust? Because it drives me crazy that in this courtroom you have Ross Ulbricht's family, watching their son sentenced to life in prison for running a website that allowed people to put things in their body. Now, another crazy thing about this is that it helps me realize how far behind the courts are, right? How outdated of a model they are. At one point, the judge is referring to how Ross, when he first got started, he went to Austin, Texas, Bastrop, Texas, outside of Austin, and grew mushrooms, magic mushrooms. And they just talked about this as if this was the most disturbing, horrible thing he could have done. Yet right now there are legitimate clinical medical research studies going on that are studying the beneficial effects of psilocybin, whether that's treating PTSD, helping people end their life in a peaceful manner, or treating nicotine addiction. There are so many benefits to this, and yet you have in this courtroom them discussing Ross's activities and the fact that he grew mushrooms like it's this disturbing, horrible crime, and it drives me crazy. And so my point that I'm getting at here at the end of the article is that this is what happens when people have come to accept cannabis, so they no longer buy propaganda about that. What happens if the idea of drug legalization or decriminalization does continue to spread and people realize that there's ways to actually treat individuals who have drug addictions? There are ways to to help those who need help rather than turning them into criminals and ruining their lives and inflating the prison system. What would happen if to the hold on, let me find this part of the article real quick. This is what I'm trying to read from. But what happens to that social cost if the populace no longer recognizes the established drug laws as just or moral? In the case of Ulbricht and the Silk Road, an individual created a website that allowed people to buy and sell any product they wanted without tax. It was the ultimate experiment in individual freedom that necessitated a sense of personal responsibility. The war on drugs has not succeeded in putting an end to drug use. Instead, it's created a situation where bloated government agencies use tactics such as the reverse sting to engineer crimes that lead to lengthy prison sentences in order to continue to justify the policies. Supporters of Ulbricht also point out the hypocrisy of the U.S. government fighting a war on drugs while having soldiers protect poppy fields in Afghanistan. To these supporters, Ross Ulbricht is another victim of the drug war. Judge Forrest said drug-related violence is not going to go away with 1 or 1,000 Silk Roads. Maybe she's right, But what would the country, the prison system, addiction treatment, and drug use look like if those who chose to partake of drugs were allowed to do so using a website that was safe, clean, and accountable? Perhaps over time, this process would outpace the desire and need for dangerous drug deals on the street. If the war on drugs was ended in favor of more sensible policies, ideas like the Silk Road might see massive growth in use and eventually create a safe way for people to exercise their freedom to make decisions about drug use. And that's all I'm saying. He is a fucking political prisoner, and this is just another failed example of the drug war. Here's the last thing I want to say about this, and this is another quote from Dread Pirate Roberts from the Silk Road Forum. Silk Road has already made an impact on the war on drugs. The effect of the war is to limit people's access to controlled substances. Silk Road has expanded people's access. The great thing about agorism is that it is a victory from 1,000 battles. Every single transaction that takes place outside the nexus of state control is a victory for those individuals taking part in the transaction. So there are thousands of victories here each week, and each one makes a difference, strengthens the agora, and weakens the state. It's quite obvious that Ross and Dread Pirate Roberts were seeing this as a philosophical fight against the state, and it's unfortunate that during those moments when you're in court, you have to go back and basically beg and say, I no longer believe this way. I don't really know what Ross Ulbricht does believe, and if he did change his mind after everything he's been through, I wouldn't blame him. I know how prison and jail and being in cages can mess with your head, and he's facing his whole life, so it's on another level. Let's move on to the next subject, surveillance, and this is a continuation of my coverage on stingrays. Just something brief here. If you've listened to any of my work, you've seen any of the videos on the Conscious Resistance Network, you'll find plenty of videos, presentations from me on stingrays and the danger of them. But we have here the latest information is another police department revealing that they have been using the Stingray cell phone surveillance tool, also known as a cell site simulator, which can intercept all your communications on your cell phone, phone calls, text messages, pictures, etc., depending on the model, and is supposedly only used in emergencies, but more and more we're finding out that to be a lie. We're also finding out there's massive secrecy between the FBI and between the Harris Corporation that actually manufactures the product and all the local police departments using them. A good example of this is how new documents just revealed about a week ago that since acquiring a Stingray in late 2012, the San Bernardino Sheriff's Department has used the device 303 times between January 1st, 2014 and May 7, 2015. So just recently. And last year they've used this thing 300 times. The San Bernardino Sheriff's Department responded to public records requests sent by Ars Technica and other outlets by releasing an example of a template for a pen register and trap and trace order application. As Ars Technica reports on the pen register orders, detectives typically go to a local judge before they want to deploy the device and file an application for a pen register trap and trace order. Those orders are often sealed, even well after the case has concluded, so there is usually little public scrutiny. In the pre-cell phone area, a pen register and trap and trace order allowed law enforcement to obtain someone's calling metadata in near real time from the phone company. Lawyers for the county released a document that they claimed was a warrant application template. The application does not offer any legal authority on which the sheriffs base their activities. And Fred Cate, a law professor at Indiana University, told Ars Technica, "This is astonishing because it suggests the absence of legal authorization, because if there were clear legal authorization, you can bet the government would be citing it. Alternatively, it might suggest that the government just doesn't care about legal authorization. Either interpretation is profoundly troubling." And you also have this attorney with the ACLU saying the template is likely to mislead judges who receive applications based on it because it gives no indication that the Sheriff's Department intends to use a Stingray. And this is pretty much standard around the country, is that in the incidents that they actually do try to get a court order or a warrant, and they act as if those are one and the same, or they get this pen register, trap and trace order, the language they use is extremely vague, and it doesn't tell them how the Stingray works or that they're using it. They just say like surveillance or they don't tell the judges exactly. So even if a judge is getting warrants and they have to approve them, they might not even know what it is, or the judges are just part of it, depending on your perspective. Judges have no hope of ensuring that the use of Stingrays comply with Fourth Amendment, even if they are kept in the dark about law enforcement's intent to use a Stingray. When police hide the ball from judges, our justice system cannot ensure justice. And yeah, this is, like I said, the latest in Stingray information. Keep up with that one because I sure will. And I see it happening 2015. More people are learning about stingrays, and I feel thankful to be a part of that because it's my work, like mine and plenty of other independent freelance journalists around the country filing open records requests and asking questions that are getting this talked about. So you're welcome. All right, let's get to my two stories on Detroit. I don't think I've talked to you about this one recently, but I'm excited about both of these for different reasons, and I really want to get you guys to communicate, have conversations. So if you're listening on the SoundCloud, if you're watching on the YouTube, let's leave a comment, okay? Leave a comment about one of the stories that I talked about today so far, the Silk Road, the Stingrays, what we're about to talk here, Dale Brown, Detroit Threat Management, which is, private security, community policing, and the last topic is going to be the Detroit Water Brigade. If you've got anything to say, if you want to join the network, let's have a conversation. I don't want to just be talking at you. I enjoy doing podcasts, but I really like a conversation better. So when I do these, if there's something I say for those 30 or 40 or 50 of you who actually listen to this, if it strikes your fancy, let's have a conversation. Let's talk. Let's figure out how we can create a more free world. This one's called Think, Don't Shoot. Detroit man bridges the security gap left by a failing police force. I did not come up with that title, but it's kind of interesting. Commander Dale Brown is bringing nonviolent conflict resolution training to Detroit, a city where the police department struggles to maintain a basic level of security for what's left of the city's dwindling population. I really like these articles because, like I said, they're long form, and if you're watching, you can see over here on the right side of the screen other articles from me. These are all my long form articles, and let's see here. But the Water Brigade, I confronted George Bush, reverse drug stings, and my in-depth investigation on stingrays. All of those are, I think, some of my best work and much deeper than what you typically see me do on Ben Swan, truthandmedia.com or Anti-Media, because those are more short, straight to the point with a little bit of detail. And I have a trouble writing or keeping things trim, but I'm trying my best. But if you want my long, in-depth articles, Mint Press News, that's where you go. But I'm going to give you a rundown of this. So basically, I went to Detroit and I interviewed Dale Brown, who is known as Commander Brown. He's the head of the Detroit Threat Management Center. And he runs this crazy compound. It's a training center for individuals who want to either be part of his security team or individuals who are just looking to get some defensive training. They do free Family Fridays. They do free training to cops. They have fake knives, dummy batons, airsoft guns, punching bags, obstacle course, which this is all used for their tactical training. And Dale Brown is focused on, here is his own words, everything here is designed to increase the probability of producing nonviolent outcomes, the ability to solve an issue without creating collateral issues. So he calls the Threat Management Center a private corporation that specializes in non-lethal methods of managing threats. Threat management provides education and facilitation services for individuals, corporations, and communities. He stresses that their center is a school offering tactical training, a functional fitness course, as well as private and community services. And he says that the focus, and this is what I think is the powerful thing, is as much on the physical as the psychological. And he was an Army airborne paratrooper. He went into private investigation. He's done self-defenses, and he started cleaning up his neighborhood. Over the last 20 years or so, it's evolved and grown, and he's just kicking ass out there and training other people how to de-escalate situations rather than make them worse, which is what the police tend to do. They come in, aggressively, and he is teaching people how, if you want to keep people from fighting and hating the cops, well, then you need to give them proper training, because in his view, he's saying they don't even have any training. It's really just 5 months and expect them what to do, to know what to do and put in these hostile situations. He also has said, we're a performance-based organization. We're not looking for people who are strictly financially motivated or looking to fulfill a Rambo fantasy. We don't kick in doors or put bags on people's heads. And, he said, the ideal Viper is a community-conscious individual who is self-aware and intelligent. It's someone who enjoys helping and is at least 25 years old. The performance is much more intellectual than physical. It's about keeping yourself cool, calm, in a state of solution-seeking. You cannot be fixated on fighting, shooting, or wanting power. We're looking for individuals who are prepared to put themselves at risk in an intelligent way. So, you can obviously hear in what he's discussing, like the difference between what the cops do and what he does. Now, I'm going to read you the last bit of this article because these are the important questions. I've written about this before. You can find an old anti-media article I did a while back that maybe I need to pull out again, but it was called Community Defense as an Alternative to Traditional Policing, or Alternative to the Police State, or something like that. And it was really just looking into these ideas and these examples of ways that we can create something different to the monopoly institution that we have from the state. We can create a more free way to protect our communities, and it doesn't have to be aggressive, it doesn't have to be violent. And I think this is a great example of that. So let me just read this briefly to you. Okay, this is all powerful here. The center also offers free children's classes on gun safety, as well as free Family Fridays when families are invited to check out the compound and learn about the services offered there. The Vipers even have a boat to teach basic boat safety, provide security on the marina, and offer free towing for broken down boats. Brown says this programming is all essential to ending cycles of violence. If we want kids to perform better as adults, we have to create the conditions for them to do so, which means not exposing them to violence or crime, he said. In Brown's 20-year career as a threat management specialist, not one person on his team has been killed, nor have they ever killed anyone while protecting a client. When asked if his training model could replace traditional police training, he is careful to distinguish between what he does and what the police do. While Brown believes that police violence is increasing and needs to be dealt with, he is not ready to eliminate the institution itself and replace it with private security. You need people to protect the community from the negative elements and enforce the laws, he says. He says his role is a community protector, not someone who stops violations of the law. And this may be the key to changing the perception of police from instigators of violence to protectors of the powerless. Ultimately, he says, everyone has value and everyone should be protected. People like protectors. Check it out. Read that article. Read all of that. I skimmed through it there. But I think it's a powerful story, and the dude's badass. Like I said, I've got new videos coming out, an interview with him discussing this stuff, also him showing me some training moves. You'll probably find it entertaining. Look out on the Conscious Resistance YouTube channel and website for that very soon. Now let's wrap this up with my last story for today on Detroit, and my second story. My last one of the trilogy of a 3-part series should be out this week, and I'm not sure what they're going to call it, but it's more focused on the community aspect of it. And I'm trying to bring agorism and community, not looking to the government, into all of my articles, so I definitely have a bias. I'm trying to get people to wake up as objectively as possible. This one's called Thirsty for Progress. Detroit Water Brigade takes a stand against water shutoffs. And corporate customers with past due bills continue to operate in Detroit, yet the city's families who are unable to pay have their water shut off. It's just one drop in a flood of crises, and the Detroit Water Brigade has had enough. And this just looks into the awesome work being done by them. And I went there and visited them on a day when it was a neighborhood cleanup and barbecue party. It said it was a chance to help board up abandoned homes, pick up trash, and meet special guest DeAndre Levy, linebacker for the Detroit Lions. And I got to talk to D'Amico Williams, who's the co-founder of the Detroit Water Brigade, and he had some powerful things to say. And this, to me, the reason this topic is important is because it seems like there's a knee-jerk reaction among certain libertarians and certain anarcho-capitalists and people that I do associate with, even though I don't really consider myself to be one of those, but that has a knee-jerk reaction towards saying, yeah, let's privatize, whatever. And I just think that water is one of the really tricky areas. And I say this because I watch indigenous struggles from around the world and see how their communities have their water stolen from them through privatization. And we gotta be compassionate when we think about our solutions and try to figure out how we can best get through these things without, I believe in individual freedom as ultimately important, but I also believe in collective liberation. But I think that the collective liberation can't happen without the individual, so I don't believe in collectivism and swallowing up the individual amongst the whole. But at the same time, I think that we should pursue freedom and work towards our goals of freedom, and in the process not forget the people that are also struggling and find ways to help them. It doesn't mean that I think that true selflessness probably doesn't exist on most levels, but that you can be a bodhisattva, you can be somebody who is working towards your own freedom, but also putting it off a little bit longer as you help work towards the liberation of other people. And I see it as you're pulling people out of the matrix, right? So I'm working towards freeing my own mind, freeing my own heart, and freeing my own physical world, but at the same time I am trying to bring others with me. And I think that's what's important to remember when we're talking about water privatization. And maybe I'm just missing the point. I've heard some people explain it to me. I understand privatization, I understand Austrian economics and libertarianism, and I get most of everything but I also think that sometimes life is more complex than a certain, than just a strict philosophy or dogma will allow. We have to be willing to accept that and to move and flow with that and be fluid. Look at community solutions. So the Detroit Water Brigade does everything from helping people with water who don't have water, blocking the trucks that are trying to disconnect the water, meeting with the city. They've met with the United Nations. They've gone to Ireland to meet with those over there who are having their own water struggles. And it's continued to escalate. The situation has, and as far as I can see, when I was leaving, the water shutoffs were still going on, and this is, we've seen a big fight from them. This is here's the end of this article. Meanwhile, much of the debate around the water shutoffs revolves around the question of whether or not water is a human right. The way an individual answers that question determines the solutions he or she might put forth. Some argue that since water is essential to life, it should be freely available to everyone at an affordable price, while others believe water privatization would lead to cheaper water, not an increase in prices, as critics of privatization fear. Again, Williams stresses compassion. Who is anyone to deny another person water? Water is a fundamental human right. He also reiterates that his group is not calling for free water. He said, "Nobody asked for free water. We asked for affordable water so we can all enjoy this one source of life." How the situation will play out in Detroit remains to be seen. But one thing is certain. While the city is corporatized, the working class suffers. As for the Detroit Water Brigade, the organization continues to grow and garner international support. The group is now creating a spin-off community, the Detroit Workers and Builders Union. The group's co-founder, Justin Weeds, recently announced that he was resigning to head up the Workers and Builders Union in an effort to put, quote, homeless and low-income Detroiters to work fixing the city and its aging water system. Weeds says he is confident that the Detroit Water Brigade, under Williams' leadership, will continue to provide a valuable service for Detroiters in their fight to provide water to those who are most vulnerable. And yeah, it goes on from there. So what are your thoughts on water privatization? What are your thoughts on the Detroit situation? Please read through the article before you comment so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. And all of the articles today will be linked in the SoundCloud and in the YouTube, so you can read them, comment, let's interact. Let's make this a conversation, not just a one-way dialogue. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please do go to theconsciousresistance.com. Get in touch with us if you want to become a part and join our collaborative network. And share some of the links you find. Keep up with speaking events. Download the book. Get a copy. Download it. Let me know what you think. And there'll be plenty of videos coming your way. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, if you can hear this, you are the resistance. Peace.